most suspicious moment in Silo Season 3, Episode 7, isn't the discovery of the 51 silos, the vitamin D, or even the safeguard. It's the moment Lukas and Kennedy walk into the darkness outside Silo 18 and suddenly hear something that should not be an algorithm. First comes the buzzing, then the gunshots, then silence.
Hearing a buzzing sound.
And for a moment, the entire story wants us to believe that Lukas and Kennedy are dead. But then, near the end of the episode, Kennedy suddenly contacts Martha over the radio.
This is Deputy Calso. Here on level 17.
And tells her that he survived. And that's where the mystery becomes much bigger, because Kennedy doesn't simply return with Lukas. He returns with Lukas' helmet. So where is Lukas? What happened during those missing hours? And most importantly, if the algorithm had already claimed that both men were neutralized,
I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but they didn't make it to Silo 17.
why was Kennedy still alive? The episode isn't giving us a normal rescue story here. It's hiding an event from us. Remember what Lukas and Kennedy were actually doing. Juliet needed information from Silo 17, specifically the blueprint connected to the safeguard system. She couldn't simply walk out herself, so Lukas and Kennedy were sent into the dead world. They knew the risks. They knew what happened to people who went outside. And yet their mission initially appears to go perfectly. Lukas is even distracted by the stars, which is an important little character moment, because this is the same man whose curiosity about the outside world helped connect him to Juliet in the first place. Kennedy, meanwhile, is much more focused on the danger around them. Then they reach the area around Silo 17, and suddenly that buzzing starts. That's the detail I keep coming back to. What exactly makes that sound? Because if this were simply another group of armed survivors waiting outside, why introduce the buzzing first? Why make the sound itself the warning sign? And then there are the gunshots. That's where the official story starts falling apart. Camille is told that Lukas and Kennedy have been neutralized. The algorithm apparently knows enough to report their deaths almost immediately. But Juliet doesn't buy the explanation because she heard the gunfire herself. She knows something happened outside. And here's the problem. Juliet walked through that same world before. She made it to Silo 17. She didn't encounter an invisible army waiting in the field. She didn't trigger a swarm of weapons simply by walking outside. So whatever attacked Lukas and Kennedy appears to be connected to something different, or something that has been activated since Juliet's journey. That opens up our first major theory. The attack was caused by an automated defense system protecting the silos. We've already learned that the algorithm isn't just a computer making decisions inside Silo 18. It has access to systems capable of physically enforcing its rules. The safeguard isn't merely poison in a pipe. It's an entire security architecture designed to prevent people from escaping the controlled environment. If the primary system has been compromised, it makes perfect sense that a secondary defense mechanism could activate. The buzzing could have been drones. The gunshots could have come from automated weapons. And if that's what happened, Kennedy surviving becomes even more interesting, because it means the system didn't necessarily intend to kill both men. Maybe Lukas was the target. Think about that for a second. Why would the system care about Lukas specifically? Because Lukas isn't just another resident. He understands the silo's architecture. He has been investigating the safeguard. He has information Juliet desperately needs. And more importantly, Lukas has spent years trying to understand the world beyond the walls. The algorithm doesn't need everyone dead. It needs certain information to remain contained. If the system recognized Lukas as a serious threat, eliminating him while allowing Kennedy to escape could actually make strategic sense. Kennedy might be considered less dangerous. Lukas is the one carrying the knowledge. But there's another possibility that is even darker. What if Lukas wasn't killed at all? What if he was captured? That would explain why Kennedy comes back without him. It would also explain why the episode refuses to show us a body. In a show like Silo, a character being declared dead without the audience seeing what actually happened is practically an invitation to question it. Kennedy's survival is confirmation that the encounter wasn't as simple as they walked outside and got shot. Something happened in the darkness, and Kennedy either couldn't rescue Lukas or was forced to leave him behind. And there's another detail that makes this theory stronger. Kennedy has Lukas' helmet. Why does Kennedy have it? If Lukas died instantly in the attack, Kennedy could have recovered the helmet. But if they were separated during an attack, the helmet could have been taken from Lukas. Kennedy might have found it afterward, or Lukas might have deliberately given it to him before they separated. The episode doesn't tell us, and that ambiguity matters, because the writers could easily have had Kennedy say, "Lucas is alive, we're safe." They didn't. Instead, we get Kennedy's voice. That's it. And Silo has already established that communication itself cannot necessarily be trusted. This brings us to the most disturbing theory of all. What if Kennedy's transmission isn't really Kennedy? The algorithm has been monitoring communications. It understands the people inside Silo 18. It knows Martha's radio channels. It knows Juliet's plans. It knows Lucas and Kennedy were sent to Silo 17. If the system can manipulate information, then creating a fake radio transmission isn't impossible. The purpose would be obvious. Stop Juliet from carrying out the attack on Judicial. Because that's exactly what happens. Juliet is preparing to make an incredibly dangerous decision. The bombing could kill around 1,000 people, but Bernard warns that doing nothing could eventually cost around 2,000 lives once the memory suppression takes effect. Everyone is preparing for the worst. And then, at precisely the moment when they need a reason to stop, Kennedy suddenly calls. Convenient? Very. But I wouldn't go all the way and say the voice is definitely fake. There's a more interesting possibility. Kennedy is real, but someone is controlling what information he is allowed to communicate. Maybe Kennedy really reached Silo 17. Maybe the children found him. Maybe Lucas was injured or captured. And maybe Kennedy doesn't understand the entire situation himself. He could be transmitting from somewhere the algorithm can't completely control, while whatever happened to Lucas remains unknown. And that brings us to Silo 17. Because everyone is assuming the mystery is about the attack. I think the bigger mystery is, who was waiting near Silo 17? The children are there. Solo is there. The silo has its own history. Juliet already survived the journey. So why does the same route suddenly become deadly when Lucas and Kennedy attempt it? Maybe the attack wasn't coming from Silo 18. Maybe it came from Silo 17. What if the buzzing and gunfire weren't automated defenses at all? What if somebody inside Silo 17 saw two strangers approaching and opened fire? The children have been living in an isolated, traumatized environment for a long time. They don't necessarily know who Juliet's people are. They might see anyone approaching as a threat. And if Kennedy later managed to establish communication with Martha, that could mean he was able to reach the people inside Silo 17. But then, where is Lucas? That's the piece that doesn't fit, and that's exactly why I believe the show wants us to keep asking about him. Lucas is too important to simply disappear between two gunshots. His relationship with Juliet, his knowledge of the silos, his fascination with the outside world, and his understanding of the safeguard make him one of the few characters who can connect the different pieces of this story. If the writers wanted to kill him, they could have given him a dramatic death. Instead, they gave us a helmet, a mysterious transmission, and a missing body. That doesn't feel like a death scene, it feels like a disappearance. And if Lucas is alive, there are only a few places he could be. He could be injured somewhere between the silos. He could be inside Silo 17. He could have been captured by whoever controls the external defense system. Or, and this is where the theory gets really interesting, Lucas may have discovered something before Kennedy escaped, something the algorithm desperately doesn't want Silo 18 to know. Because what if Lucas discovered that Silo 17 isn't simply another abandoned silo? What if it is the key to understanding how all 51 silos were designed to function? Suddenly, Lucas disappearing becomes much more important than whether he survived a firefight. He may have crossed into the one place where the algorithm's control over Silo 18 doesn't matter, and that could explain why Kennedy was allowed to return. Maybe Kennedy wasn't the survivor. Maybe he was the messenger. The algorithm may have been perfectly happy to let him go because Kennedy doesn't know what Lucas discovered. So when Kennedy finally calls Martha, everyone hears good news. They think at least one of their people survived. But the audience should be asking a different question. What did Kennedy see that he hasn't told them yet? And until we see Lucas, I'm not buying the idea that he's dead. The gunshots prove something attacked them. The buzzing tells us the attack wasn't ordinary. Kennedy's survival proves the attackers didn't simply wipe them both out. The missing body tells us Lucas. Fate remains unresolved. And that strange radio transmission comes at exactly the moment Juliet is about to make a decision that could change the entire future of Silo 18. So the real mystery of episode the 7th of may not be, did Lucas survive? It may be, did Lucas discover something in Silo 17 that the algorithm was willing to kill him to protect? Because if Lucas is still alive, and if he's somewhere inside Silo 17, then the next episode could completely change our understanding of what those silos were built to do. And when he finally comes back, I don't think he's going to return empty-handed.